KFSR at CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
Welcome to another edition of the Central Valley Ledger. We're recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative Fresno and Clovis. If the scenery looks a little different for this program, for those who are watching us on CMAC channels, it's because we're recording out of Studio B of the CMAC building. Today we're going to be talking about a parade. It's a parade that gets notoriety across the nation. It's the Central Valley Veterans Parade, and our guest is Mr. Larry Duba. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here.
Before we talk about the parade, let's talk a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I graduated from San Jose State College and went to work for Pacific Gas and Electric. And well, there, the writing was on the wall that I was probably going to get drafted. So I volunteered to go into the United States Air Force. I went to officer training school, and I was stationed at Vandenberg Air Force Base between 1968 and 72 and supported downrange missile launches. And then after that I returned to PG&E, but I went into the Air Force Reserves. So I was in the Air Force Reserves at Travis Air Force Base for about 8 years. I had cross-trained into air transportation where they had the big cargo planes. And then I moved to Fresno and found out that there was a military intelligence reserve detachment at Castle Air Force Base out of Atwater. So I applied for that and cross-trained into military intelligence. So I was there for 8 or 9 years. Then I got involved in Desert Shield just before Desert Storm in 1991. And then after that year, they dropped my position. They wanted me to retire. I didn't want to retire yet. So I got a position at McClellan Air Force Base east of Sacramento in the Ground Theater Air Control Systems group. And then they forced me to retire at the end of 95 because I was lieutenant colonel. I didn't make full colonel.
You could be anywhere. Listening to your background, you could be anywhere right now in the nation or in the world. There's more of you, I bet you, if I start asking about you. How did you end up in Fresno? What's the connection to Fresno?
Well, I was working in San Francisco for Pacific Gas and Electric, and there was a promotional opportunity here. So I came down September 73 and started working at the old PG&E building on Fulton Mall. And I've been in Fresno ever since.
So, Air Force. So you've flown fighter jets and cargo jets?
No, I wasn't a pilot.
Okay.
I was always in support roles.
Talk about what that support role could be.
Okay. Well, when I was in active duty at Vandenberg Air Force Base, we would have missile launches. We had the Minuteman missiles across the United States during the Cold War, and they would bring a missile to the base and fire it to check reliability. And so we would have ground-based radar. We'd have ships that went out to sea to track the trajectory, and we also had Araya aircraft, advanced radar instrumented aircraft. So they would go out to these missiles would would go out to Eniwetok and Canton Islands and be recovered in a lagoon. And so that was basically what I was involved in on active duty. And I was involved in the maintenance issues like the Philco Ford contract for all the radio systems on the base and so forth. And then when I went in reserves up at Travis Air Force Base, it was cargo planes and passengers. And I was there when I got to see some of the POWs from Vietnam land, get off the aircraft and kiss the ground.
Oh,
so that was quite emotional.
That has got to be a touching experience for you to watch that. The military, I've never been. Mm-hmm. You've created bonds with people in the military that are almost family-like, is what I would say. Am I correct? Talk about the bonds.
Yes, really, that's true. And that's the part you miss when you're out of the service. And of course, that's one of the reasons in 1919 they started the American Legion, because all these war heroes from World War I were getting out of the service, and so in France they decided to start an organization where all the soldiers could bond, continue their bonding and see each other, as a support group, because that's what you do in battle. You're supporting the person next to you. So that's how the American Legion got started in 1919. But as far as I have friends in Washington and the local area and so forth, still from when I was in the reserves, for example.
You worked at PG&E, but you still volunteered to go into the military. Are you glad you did it?
Oh yes, and it provided me a second career. And even though you work 5 days during the week and then you work on the weekend in reserves, at least it was a psychological difference, and you were doing something productive. You were helping. And whether it was intelligence or air cargo or whatever the job might be. And you have to give credit to all the servicemen abroad, but also locally, because it's a team effort. And also the family members sacrifice as well, because their loved one is gone for periods of time. They have to do more at the house to take care of everything for the family when their husband or wife are gone, deployed.
Two things really are happening here in the near future when it comes to Central Valley veterans. There's a banquet coming up. Tell us about the banquet.
Okay, we have a veterans fundraiser November 2nd. It's going to be at the Clovis Veterans Memorial District building in Clovis. And it's going to start at about 5 o'clock. And we have two special speakers. We're flying up from San Diego. These are the two ladies are the authors of the book about the USS Indianapolis. And we're hopefully going to have one of the last 12 surviving members, one of them at the banquet as well. But we've also invited 3 veterans that live locally who survived other ships that sank besides the Indianapolis. So the Indianapolis was a ship that was on a top secret mission. It took components of the Little Boy atom bomb to Tinian Island. And of course from Tinian Island it was dropped on Hiroshima in Japan to help end the war. Because they were on a top secret mission, they couldn't communicate with anybody. But as they were leaving Tinian Island on the way to the Philippines, they were torpedoed by a Japanese submarine and it sank. So these people were in the water for about 4.5 days. Of around the 900 and plus crewmen, about 600 and something were in the water, but only just over 300 survived, because unfortunately the salt water poisoning and the sharks were killing them, about 50 a day. So it was really a tragedy.
That's an interesting story. Do you think that people out in the public have not heard about it? Because to be honest with you, I'd never heard about that story.
Well, I think everybody in the Navy's heard about it. It's part of their, to the Marines, Iwo Jima, to the Navy is probably USS Indianapolis and so forth.
So there's a book about it.
Yes.
And the 2 ladies that wrote a book are coming to Fresno. So
right.
Walk us through why someone would attend this banquet.
Okay. Well, these 2 ladies interviewed over 100 survivors before they wrote the book. And then there was a movie about it. And so there's an opportunity to see these ladies and hear them talk about it, and also perhaps meet with some veterans who survived that ship and also other ships that sank. And it's a gala, so it's a semi-formal suit and tie or mess dress uniform for military. And then there's going to be an auction of some guns, some military prints that are signed by some of the aviators and so forth. And there'll be some dancing as well. So it should be a fun evening.
And when is it again?
On November 2nd, about 5 o'clock. And if they want tickets, they can dial 289-3417. 289-3417.
Do we have a lot of veterans in the valley, in the Fresno area?
Yes, there are about 350,000 veterans in our valley.
300, well, I got to stop you there.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting that high of a number. 350,000?
Right.
That's a big number.
It is. And so our organization is actually officially the Fresno Veterans Day Parade. However, we've doing business this year as the Central Valley Veterans Day Parade to be more inclusive to everybody. And we do have other groups coming to Fresno for the parade. For example, we've had the Los Banos High School Band for a few years. This will be the first year that the Travis Air Force Band comes down. And you know, Travis is next to Fairfield, East Bay area. And so anyway, there's a lot more interest. We've got last year we had, I think, 134 entries. This year we're up to 213.
Wow.
And it will be televised on KSEE 24.
KC 24.
11 to 2 in the afternoon. It's also on Facebook.
So what can people expect by going to this parade? Will there be food? Is there?
Yeah, we do have some vendors. Matter of fact, one of my relatives has a vendor. He'll be at the water tower across from the Legion of Valor. And for $8, you get a tri-tip sandwich, a drink, and chips. And it's hard to beat that, the tri-tip.
Is this a family event? I mean, are you seeing kids at this thing?
Oh, yes. Since I've been in the parade in a car, taking other veterans in our cars for years, a lot of the youth write signs, paint signs. We love you, thank you for your service. We support you, support the troops. And they'll yell. We have names on the sides of the cars of who's in the car. I've been trying to take the blind veterans for the last 3 or 4 years, and so even though they can't see the crowd clearly, they hear their names called. Thank you, you know, Butch Garcia, for example, or you know, whatever their name is. And so it's just it's really a moving experience for them. And particularly Vietnam veterans, because when they came back from Vietnam, they were not welcomed very much or very well by the general public.
And that's got to be a tough position to be in as a soldier, going to do your job.
Yes.
And then coming back and people are mad at you. That's got to be tough. Does that upset people, in your opinion? Have veterans been hurt by that?
Well, emotionally, yes. And because there's cases where they were flying home, they get to an airport, and people started yelling at them, swearing at them, spitting on them. And they would, in one case, the person just got back on the plane and left, didn't even go home. Another case, they change out of their uniform as quickly as possible in civilian clothes and go home. So one of the things that's helping counter this is the honor flight, which you've heard about. And I had the privilege of being on the honor flight in April this year. And those that get on the flight and they go to the different war memorials, Washington, D.C., it helps them heal. You know, if they're a Vietnam vet, you go to the Vietnam Wall. Unfortunately, they're going to find some names of their buddies that they fought with, but it helps bring them out of their shell, so to speak, and perhaps brings a little bit of closure. You'll never get over it, but it helps them mentally.
You've driven in the parade.
Yes.
What is it like when you're driving and you see a little kid saying, with a U.S. flag, saying thank you? I mean, sure, and when they came back from Vietnam, there were people that were very harsh towards them. But
yes,
you know, now when you get people saying thank you and you're driving, talk about that.
It's very wonderful, and if I have a blind veteran with me, I will tell him what the sign says, and so forth, and of course the veteran is saluting, you know, to the public as they drive by, and they really get a lot out of it. It's some of them have been fortunate to be in the parade for 3 or 4 years, and we're always trying to get new people in because they should experience that thank you.
I heard that it's been around for 100 years.
Yes.
And it seems like it's growing every year.
Yes, this is our 100th anniversary of the parade in Fresno. By the way, we just had a very good meeting with Mayor Brand and his staff, and they're very cooperative and they're really supportive of the veterans, the Valley veterans, and they're going to help waive some of the fees that they normally charged us so we can conduct the parade. We're always needing more funds because this year we're spending just over $50,000 because we're actually bringing in some past Grand Marshals from the East Coast. We have the Undersecretary of the Army, McFarland, coming. She'll be in the parade. So we have 11 past Grand Marshals, and then every branch of service is being treated and honored equally. So we'll have, in the order that they were organized in the United States, we'll have the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. So each one will have their own Grand Marshal and hopefully a color guard and band. That's what we're trying to set up for each branch. And then behind them will be all of the other veterans organizations like VFW, which is Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, and so forth. This year, our Grand Marshal, overall Grand Marshal for the parade is Dan Payne, the Chief Warrant Officer 3 of the Marines. And he's been working with the parade for about 14, 15 years.
Wow.
And he became the president and CEO of the Fresno Veterans Parade in 2010. And he's going to step down this year. So we're honoring him as our Grand Marshal. And we have a carriage and horses for him to ride in, he and his wife, Mary. And this is partially donated by the Leyendecker family, which is out of Visalia. And they have the Friesen horses. And my wife and I was honored by being Grand Marshal last year, and so I've arranged for this carriage for them this year.
What is the role of a Grand Marshal? You hear that word when it comes down to the parade, but what does it mean?
Well, to the individual, it's an honor to be the Grand Marshal. It demonstrates that individual has served not only the military in a high capacity or very well in an excellent manner, but also has been involved in the community to help other veterans. And that's typically what Dan Payne has been doing for years. He's also one of the narrators of the parade every year on Channel 24 with Alex Delgado. So he knows a lot about the different military vehicles, and so he's done a very good job of announcing the parade with her. And we're going to try to get, we're going to have Paul Leffler help a little bit this year as well. Well, Dan Payne is in the parade, Paul Leffler will be working with Alex, and then after he's out of the parade and he comes back to the announcer stand, Dan will continue announcing.
How long is the parade? So I've got little kids, and it's on my list to go out and watch the parade. The weather should be nice. But how long shall I allocate for that? Because, with little kids,
Sure.
Things can be challenging.
Sure. Well, we're going to start around 10:15 in the morning with some of the pre-parade ceremonies, some of the speeches and so forth. At 11 o'clock, we start television coverage, and Dan Payne would give a speech as the Grand Marshal. We would have a prayer, and Ms. Salcida would sing the national anthem. She has a wonderful voice. And then the parade itself is almost just under 4 miles long. But depending on where you're standing, the parade probably won't get over until just about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you sort of have to judge that, and you might want to get a snack during that time. We're going to have some scouts taking water bottles around, and we've got shirts to commemorate the 100th anniversary, and some dog tags made up, and keychains made up, and so forth. So some of those things will be available we don't normally have.
Interesting. Sounds like it's going to be a fun event. So the floats that go through, and I mean the term float very generally because they could be vehicles, they could be military vehicles. What are some of the things that are going to come through the parade? Well,
the Indian nations, tribes, they always have a real nice float, and they have a huge drum and people around the drum, and they decorate their float very nicely. We're going to actually have some judges this year and give out prizes for the best float, the best band, the best ROTC unit, the best car club, depending on how they decorate their cars, to honor all of the branches of service, because we're not picking one branch to honor this year. It's everybody's being honored equally, and so we're going to be giving out some prizes later. I mean, it's sort of hard to judge ahead of time until they actually pass by the grandstand.
So that's the Veterans Parade, and
Yes.
that's happening November 11th, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to what's happening November 3rd before it's gala.
I mean the 2nd, November 2nd.
November 2nd, the
Yeah,
gala.
The gala, okay.
Talk about the gala
Okay,
again.
we're going to, we're decorating the facility as if you're going on board the USS Indianapolis. So I won't tell you about all the decorations. But,
No.
But you're going to feel like, hey, you're going on board a ship. And but we also, because of the other branches of service, we have pictures that we have portholes, and there'll be pictures of different, Army vehicles or Air Force planes or whatever, to so that there's a and then we'll have some tables with some mementos on the tables. We have some past posters, parade posters that will be on display, and so forth. So here again, we're trying to represent every branch of the service, even though the talk will mainly be about the USS Indianapolis.
So I find it interesting that I wasn't around after Vietnam when the troops came back,
Mm-hmm.
and they were treated harsh by some people. How important is it for people to remember that the troops are doing their job? They're not involved necessarily in the foreign policy.
Correct.
The policy is created above ground.
Mm-hmm.
They're just doing their job that they were sworn to do. Do you think people sometimes forget that aspect of it?
Oh, definitely. But sometimes the politicians who make the decisions are out of reach. They don't come in contact with them, but they might come in contact with a serviceman getting off a plane or off of a bus or walking down the street. So it's easier for them to complain, if they have complaints, to them personally, than it is to reach their leaders who made the decisions.
And so I think that's the important message too, is the person is doing their job that they were sworn to do, and the policy, that's above them.
Right.
And I thought it's interesting. That's interesting. How can people find out more information about the veterans locally, the parade, the gala?
Okay, well, we have a Facebook. It's Fresno Veterans Parade Official is the Facebook. We have a telephone number you can call, 289-3417. That's Virginia Cardinel's number, her cell number. And she's our main coordinator. I'm her assistant, and I'm a director as well. And we have other people on the board. We have posters that we're trying to put up in businesses, windows, and so forth. And so I would say that's the best way. We have a flyer on the gala that if somebody would email us, we could send it to them, a copy of it. And I'll give out my own email address, as another source. The official one, I think, is fresnovdp.com. And mine is cabinfever7000@gmail.com. It's Cabin Fever 7000 because I have a cabin up in Kings Canyon National Park about 7,000 feet. But Cabin Fever 7000, it should be easy to remember, maybe easier than the parade one. And if somebody emails me, I'll be glad to send them information about it.
We're running out of time this week
Yes.
on the program, but how else can people like me or like the crew here putting this program on, or our audience, support veterans? I mean, I've never served, so I'll never know what it feels like to go to battle or to be on a ship with, your fellow soldiers. How can we support you?
Okay, well, there's obviously a monetary donation that can be provided, but also when you're out in the public, what I do personally, if I see somebody in uniform at a restaurant, they might be standing in line to pay for their food or order their food, or they might be already sitting down, or could be a police officer, emergency worker. I get the waitress or waiter, and I said, I'd like to pay for their meal.
That's nice of you.
And a lot of times, if they're wearing a hat, it might have the name of the ship that they served on or the branch of service, and you walk by them, thank them for their service. And so those are two ways that you can do it. Because I think the emergency responders are also very important to our community. They put their life on the line too, to rescue people out of burning buildings and so forth.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the program this week, sharing with us the gala coming up. November is going to be a busy month.
Yes.
The gala coming up and the parade, and we hope that both events are very, very successful.
Thank you very much.
That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. Thank you to our technical director, Gary Johnson, who is behind the scenes making us look and sound good, to our associate director, our associate producer, our student associate producer has been Daisy Ramirez. Thank you to those watching this broadcast on CMAC, Comcast 93 and AT&T 99, and those listening on KFSR 90.7 FM. We hope you enjoyed the program this week and you learned a little bit about the veterans in the Valley. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.